Greetings, MacNNers and our overlords at the FBI. It's time for episode 53 of the MacNN podcast. Welcome back, MacNNers. Always a pleasure to have you with us. I'm Charles Martin. I'm the editor of MacNN. We have three in the house. Besides myself, we also have managing editor Mike. Good to have you back.
Well, I have some things to say.
As well you should. And speaking of people who have things to say and then generally tends to write them all down, we also have best-selling tech author and One More Thing host, William Gallagher.
Well, hello, other best-selling author. Yes, I write things. I have actually nothing to say this time. I was going to listen to you two. And I, for one, welcome our FBI overlords. Just wanted to put that in.
Very good. That is the correct response. This week has been quite a week. We haven't had a week like this in a while where Apple was the center of the universe. This is a story that has exploded way outside of the tech community. And it's always kind of interesting to watch that happen. Now, we're not going to try and get too political or editorial here, but of course we have opinions. So that's going to come into play. And I'm just warning you now.
You know what? Play the music. We'll start.
All right. Here we go. Don't hold back, Mike. Tell us what you really
All right,
think.
look, you know what I'm going to talk about. You know that this is already about the FBI versus Apple thing.
Yes.
You already know what I feel about it from last week, but here's the situation. I've had a lot of opportunity to talk to people outside the normal tech field, and I've done a lot of educating this week without editorializing. If you have a neighbor who's casually following this based on what they see on NBC News and ABC News and mainstream news, you go over to their house right now and you tell them the facts behind the story. You know what, Charles, I just may do a completely factual, non-editorial summary of the story up to about 4 o'clock today. Print that thing out and bring it with you and read it and staple them to the floor and read it to them until they hear every word coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Because there is so much going on here that the FBI has so much invested in keeping you in the dark and repeating the word terrorism over and over and over and using that as a cudgel to say this is why we should get what we want. But the thing is terrorism is exactly why they should not get what they want.
Yeah, exactly. Without going into it too much, because we did do an awful lot of work on an article that tries to sum up as impartially as we possibly can. We actually added some extra sentences to try and defend the FBI's position on this. But not only is this case collapsing like a flan in a cupboard, because, just today we found out that the chief of police for San Bernardino no longer feels like there's anything of interest on that phone.
To be clear, it's the sheriff. It's the sheriff of San Bernardino. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the chief of police.
That's true. Different position. But this is something we've been saying all along. This is a work-issued iPhone. It wasn't destroyed by the gunman Syed Farouk, so chances are very high there's nothing on there. The curious statement, and it was, to be fair, it was from the sheriff trying to say, well, this is why we might still want to get it unlocked, is because there might be contacts on there. Well, that one isn't holding any water.
Contacts the guy didn't call? Contacts the guy didn't visit?
Yeah.
Contacts from email that he didn't already have in his iCloud or that the ISPs didn't collect for them?
Thank you. That's exactly the point.
Sorry, contacts who might be terrorists. Let's just put that in.
Well, wouldn't that be a funny place to put it, on your work phone, not your personal phone?
And that's part of all this. They smash their regular phones, and that's fine. But do you have a work phone, listener? Do you have a work phone? What do you do on it? Do you even have a game installed on it?
Well, this is the other thing, is a fact that's been glossed over a lot, needs more attention than it's gotten, which is ultimately the reason why the FBI doesn't have all the information they feel like they need. And I understand their desire to get into this thing.
Well, I do too.
Yeah. But the reason they don't have it is because of themselves and because of San Bernardino County. Now, I hate to throw the blame back on them. They've suffered a terrible tragedy, but just basic work phone management software would have given them everything.
If they had done enterprise device management properly, they could have popped this thing open like a soda can.
Yeah.
And they clearly didn't. Then there's the whole password change issue, which I don't think is as big a deal as everyone's making out to be. They're saying that the last backup was in the middle of October. The date escapes me right at the moment. And who knows what would have been obtained if we had a more current backup. Well, yeah, who knows? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So, I'll give the the FBI and the county this one, that they said that they thought they could change the password and get into the phone. I'll give them this one because it seemed like a sound enough plan. It's just because they didn't ask the right questions before they did it, and I'll give them this one. However, this does not mean that they can say, under the power of the All Writs Act, from 1789.
Well, the year that it passed doesn't matter.
It totally matters.
No, it was actually last modified in 1911, a mere 105 years ago.
Okay, Mike. Modified. They changed 5 words. They changed 5 words.
I know. But the thing that kills me about this is not that the FBI bungled that, but they did this thing, but didn't tell Apple initially that they had tried to reset the password and failed. And so Apple's given them all these suggestions. Well, you could do this. Well, you could do that. Certain situations do change with Apple when somebody's passed away, right? The Apple engineers suggested things. Okay, well, here's how you could possibly get that content. And the FBI finally had to go, well, we don't. And at that point, Apple's like, I'm sorry. We can't give you anything more than we've given you then.
The argument that's being made to me with some of this is that the FBI should be able to open it just because it's a search warrant and it's a subpoena. Well, the thing is they shouldn't be able to open it today because it has to go through the court process.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read this little part about the All Writs Act. It must not adversely affect the basic interests of the third party, impose an undue burden, and also, as part of the All Writs Act, they must not be too far removed from the case in general.
That's right.
Now, it seems to me all 3 of these things Apple qualifies for. Adversely affect the basic interests of the third party. Well, let's see. One of the presidential candidates is calling for a boycott of Apple.
Yeah. It's not just their business model, this interest in privacy. They really, really didn't want to find themselves in this position.
Yeah, Mariposa County in Arizona has decided they're not going to replace iPhones as they break, and that's fine. Impose an undue burden. It's going to take, they specified how long it was going to take in the court filing, which is written in plain English, and I think it was done intentionally so. Mm-hmm. I believe it was written so people can actually sit down and read it, and it's not covered in Latin.
Yeah, and they knew it would be released to the press, so it was very savvy on their part.
So as far as impose an undue burden, not only they're going to have to make it, they're going to have to construct an FBI lab.
Yeah.
But if this is going how the FBI wants, where they only have to build this once, the concern was that Apple would have to break this down and destroy it and rebuild it every time that there needed to be a new phone broken into. Mm-hmm. Telling me that's not an undue burden? And let's talk about removal from the crime in the first place. Let's see, Smith & Wesson is insulated from suits from people who use their guns because they're too far removed from the crime.
Yeah.
How is this different?
Well, the great Larry Wilmore made exactly this point on his show. And that was that all this talk about the iPhone, zero talk about guns.
You know what? Owning guns is an American right, and that's fine. But the thing is the All Writs Act is a law. The First Amendment is a law. The Fourth Amendment is a law.
The Fifth Amendment is a
laws. The Fifth Amendment is a law. These are all laws. And the FBI is picking and choosing which ones it's choosing to follow and which ones it isn't. In the interest of terrorism, and I just did air quotes next to my microphone, and you couldn't see it.
No, but we could hear it.
In 1999, I needed to get on a plane, and I needed to do it very quickly. I walked into an airport with cash, and I said, I need to get on this plane. And I got on the plane, and I was on the plane 45 minutes later. No bags, just myself, because I had something urgent I needed to do. How many times do I have a full body cavity search today? Let me give you another scenario here. So the FBI gets this software, which then spreads to law enforcement. Let's say Apple absolutely gets hammered in court and has to provide these unlocking tools to everybody. Okay. So now somebody gets arrested. And while they're being arrested and their belongings are on the other side of the one-way mirror,
right,
somebody is now installing a piece of software to take a picture every 30 seconds on this guy's cell phone and send it to an FBI server.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier with unauthorized home button repairs, talking about, shady dealers, right? Maybe shady dealers from other countries that have an interest in this, repairing home buttons and then being able to get into the secure enclave. This is our own government doing this.
Yeah.
Or potentially anyway. The thing that has fascinated me about this and infuriated me about it is that there will come a day when an actual case will come along where we have to debate these things. This case is unbelievably weak for the FBI to play all their cards on the table. They have already made it extremely clear now. They'll do anything.
The story has changed so many times. It's the only phone we need. Oh, no, wait, it's not.
Yeah.
And New York City saying, well, we've got 144. Now California is saying that they have hundreds.
Right.
Maybe thousands of phones that they want access to.
And these are probably mostly drug dealers that they're talking about. Certainly not terrorists. And of course, as we've said in our editorial, although these people who did the San Bernardino attack seemed like they were becoming extremists, yes, this attack does not really fit the profile of what we think of as terrorism.
The guy in the car a half an hour before he got shot pledges allegiance to ISIS on Facebook in public.
Right.
Does this sound like a criminal mastermind who's using encrypted messaging tools to talk with his handlers?
Exactly. But more importantly, you're not going to bring down America by attacking your workplace's Christmas party. I'm sorry. That's not how you do that.
The thing is, you take down America by you do things like this, and you make the entire national discussion be about walls and be about encryption on phones.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you take down America. You take down America by making sure that if you don't have a government-issued photo ID when you go across state lines, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
That's how you take down America. Hey, guess what? I was on a freaking submarine for 5 years in the 90s. A submarine.
As part of the U.S. Navy, we should add.
As part of the U.S. Navy. Yeah, I didn't just go on, the Disney ride for 5 years consecutively.
You were Captain Nemo?
You cannot tell me I do not have skin in this game. You cannot tell me that I have not made enough sacrifices for this country in the name of freedom, only to see it get stripped away under a Republican president, no less, and then a Democratic president who declined to roll some of that back.
Yeah, this is kind of what's shocking me a bit, although I understand the delicate position that he's in. I nevertheless am quite disappointed that the president and the White House have not said, hey, wait a minute, particularly as this case becomes increasingly weak. The minute FBI Director James Comey had to go under oath and talk to Congress about this, suddenly he's walking back a lot of these claims that he's made.
Well, yeah, and suddenly he's saying, I don't want to invade the United States privacy, but oh, wait, yes, I do.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there's quotes about it all over the internet about how he said, we don't want to loose a master key upon the land.
But the problem is that's exactly what they want to do.
That is exactly what they want to do. When the tech nerd tells you that is exactly what you're doing, you should listen.
Yeah, what position is that for the FBI to say, no, you don't have to go that far in making a tool? Well, you know what? He does.
Well, this is the thing, and this is the thing that a lot of people should remember. When Director Comey was talking to the press, he made all kinds of absolutist statements. But when he was talking under oath, all of a sudden, out comes the I'm not an expert line. Okay. And then he goes on to say, this was to me the most unbelievable thing in a week of unbelievable things. He goes on to say at the congressional hearing that if Apple was forced to develop any kind of software that could unlock phones in the way that the FBI would like, that you don't have to worry about it escaping or being replicated elsewhere because that's not a real thing. That's a quote.
What an enormous load of crap. You know how early I had you know how early I had OS 8 for the Mac?
Nope.
Not even a developer preview.
Wow.
I had pre-gold. I mean, come on. This is not a big deal. You can take 20 seconds on Google and find pre-release software all the time.
Indeed, this country, just in having this discussion about what it would take to get into, to brute force a new iPhone, we've already started people's minds, the people who want to try and break this, we've already started their minds going by detailing what it would take. We've already started weakening our security. This has been a terrible topic to bring up in the first place. This is a really bad case for them to hang their hat on. And as it turns out, it's collapsing underneath them. We couldn't say how the judge in this case will reconsider her original order, but I feel very strongly, even if Antonin Scalia was still alive and the court had all 9 justices on board, I still think this case would not make it through the Supreme Court.
Scalia being a literalist with the law.
Well, he was a literalist when it suited him, but
you and I differ on this.
But he did, in fact, we ran the quote in a cartoon somewhere, but he did actually say that sometimes you have to accept the criminality of a few to protect the privacy of us all. That's almost a direct quote from him, from Scalia, who is arguably the most conservative justice who has ever sat on that bench.
Obviously, we're not concerned about this at all out here. Whatever you lot do doesn't affect the rest of the world at all. We're fine with it. But if I just break off from searching Google for pre-release copies of iOS 10, I think we've actually established the route out of this. What will happen next in this conversation. You're saying that there are now thousands of iPhones in contention for this. This is actually a new business for Apple. They'll open up their FBI center. They'll do this. Samsung will come along with one that opens up FBI phones as well. And it's a new industry. Everything grows. Money ever. It'll be happy. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
It is true that America is exceptionally good at creating business opportunities out of tragedies. True. But, this is the thing. If there's any Android people out there who are thinking, well, this isn't going to affect me. No. Criminals also do carry Androids from time to time. The FBI will want into those phones too. And they've already said as much. William over in the UK, the Prime Minister over there has said repeatedly previously, many times, that he would prefer that everyone's internet browser history was open to authorities at all times. That's not China. That's not Iran. That's not Russia. That's the UK. You see where we're going with this?
This week, David Cameron said this thing about this thing going on with the EU and the referendum to do that, whether we stay in the European Union or not.
Yeah.
He said something like, I'm not trying to be re-elected. I actually mean what I'm saying. And I think, okay, just slap your forehead. That mean, yes, I don't think this is the brightest guy, or at least I think he ought to be, but sorry.
I like the way he differentiates between things he will say to get reelected and things that he actually means.
Yes. I'm happy at talking about American politics. Let's just forget Britain.
Yeah.
I'm a conservative. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm a conservative on this. And most of the democratic social policies and international policies I despise and have always despised. That's nothing new. Now, let's not get crazy. I'm not a Trump supporter.
Well, Trump isn't a conservative either, so no worries there.
So, when people on our forum start banning about, well, you're such a liberal site. Well, no, we're not. But here's the thing. I will respect your point of view. If you tell me that I think the FBI should be able to do this and here's why.
Yeah.
If you break this down for me, if you tell me exactly what your issue is with this and you tell me, I'll say, okay, I don't agree with you and that's fine. But what I will not tolerate is when somebody just says, well, because they're the FBI, they ought to be able to do it. No, you know what? You lost the ability to even talk to me about this. You go and you read something and you come back to me educated and you tell me why you believe this other than waving your American flag over your head and saying that they're law enforcement.
And speaking of flag waving, my position on this, I am generally a left-leaning person on some issues, but actually fairly conservative on others. But on this issue, I'm neither. I'm practically libertarian on it. If you're going to be a constitutionalist, this is where that bus stops, and you should get on. Because this is literally a constitutional case. This is not about one dead gunman, and he might have some contacts on there that we're interested in. That's not what this case is about at all. It is about the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments. Particularly the Fourth, but also the First and also the Fifth. Just one brief example. If you're going to unlock an iPhone, if you can brute force the passcode, you now have access to all the contents. Not just the FBI says we think there are some contacts we're interested in, although that line's a bunch of bull. But never mind that. The FBI has declined to specify what they think is on this thing and where they're going to look. They're going to have access to the entire phone. To borrow an analogy from somebody else, this is like the FBI asking for keys to every house in your neighborhood because one of you has a pot plant in the basement.
Yes and no. The no on that is it's a county-owned phone. And since the guy used a county-owned phone, anything on that phone is subject to the whims of the county.
Sure.
If he was not crazed and went shooting up the Christmas party, okay, if his supervisor said, give me your phone,
right,
he has every right to look through every single thing on that phone because it's a county-owned work phone.
Yes, but the tool that the FBI is insisting be created doesn't distinguish.
The two issues need to be separated.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's a county-owned phone. Yes, all these things need to be done. However, it does not mean that the FBI has the right to induce Apple to, let me pull up the text again, to adversely affect the basic interests of it, impose an undue burden on it, and consider it that it's right next to the crime. Because just because the guy had a phone, how about all the other people who died in shootings today? 50 people, between 30 and 50 people died in gun violence in the United States today, just on the average.
Right.
Where's the line?
Yes.
Let's say one shooter kills one person. Do we get to pop his phone open, or do we not do that because he's not a terrorist? Well, guess what? The guys at San Bernardino weren't terrorists. But what makes a terrorist act? I don't know. The FBI doesn't know. They just slap it on whenever they see fit for public information, for public relations.
Well, that's it. And they see this. At first, I thought they were proceeding with noble intentions, but misguided thinking. Now I am convinced that they have thought this through. They are using the fear of terrorism in the United States and the tendency of the public to overreact to fears to undermine the Constitution.
I don't think they thought it through. I think they are too stupid to have figured it out that they have said other things in the past. I don't think that this was some grand plot from the get-go. I'm not that far away from that, but I'm not there yet. I just think that the various parts of the FBI are too stupid.
Well, to that, I can only respond with a great meme that I saw on Facebook, which is somebody, and I'm paraphrasing it, but somebody said, to all you conspiracy theorists out there, ponder on this. The FBI cannot apparently unlock an iPhone on its own.
Never assume malice when stupidity will cover it. Apple wasn't even at the court case where this was decided.
I know. That was a shocking revelation. When the director of the FBI, in testifying before Congress, starts saying, well, I'm not an expert, which is the legal version of I'm taking the fifth on this.
He didn't have a choice because he still doesn't. He keeps on getting slapped with these facts that he didn't have before.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go so far as to say that this is some big political grandstand. I'm not going to do that because I don't have that information in front of me. Everything that I've seen can be explained by utter, abject governmental stupidity.
Okay, you may very well be right. You certainly know more about it and are closer to it than I am. But I have difficulty believing that the FBI does not know what the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says.
It takes one person to say, no, it doesn't apply here because. You just have to go back to something else that we have recently seen an anniversary on. You just have to go back to the Challenger disaster to see what happens when one guy says, no, it'll be fine, and 10 guys say, no, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. The government is like that. The military is like that. The government is like that. And the people who say that you should trust the government, why do you trust the government?
Yeah.
They have everything to gain by not passing any laws worth a damn.
Yeah.
Why do you think Trump and Sanders are doing as well as they are in the polls?
It is fascinating to me that those two in particular, they may not be the nominees, we'll have to see about that, but that they are stirring the public interest.
They're stirring the public interest for the same reason. It's different. It is not the same as the same crap that we're dealing with. However, both men need to realize if they're elected, they're not going to be the king.
Well, this is the thing, right? I've been saying this all along. You can elect pretty much anyone you want for president. That's fine. If I get to pick Congress, though, things will either get done or not get done.
Yeah.
So it's Congress that spends the money. It's Congress that actually passes the laws. The president has some certain duties that are important. I don't want to undermine that office. He sort of leads the legislative agenda and has very other significant duties. But there's a lot he can't do without Congress's approval. So you elect Bernie Sanders, but you give him a Republican Congress, guess what happens?
Yeah, well, let's move on from this a little bit. Let me just finish this argument with this. We have an iPhone 6S Plus in this house. A9 processor, radio receivers. It is a supercomputer. It is a telecommunications giant device, unfathomable 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Completely unimaginable. Processing power, a stunning amount of processing power. So your neighbor decides that you're doing something bad and tells the cops about it. So what happens when the cops say, well, give me one of your old phones in the house, or why don't we just put this here? I'm going to install this software on this phone. And you know what? Just leave it next to the wall next to your neighbor.
Yeah.
And as far as that goes, why are we stopping there? We got all upset with the Snowden revelations, which the feds didn't really deny.
No, they never did.
Echelon has existed since the 90s.
Yeah.
So this is what we're getting bent out of shape about?
Well, that's the thing. In a country where people feel so powerless, they'll pick on something that they really can't affect as the champion cause. As Howard Stern once said, the bigger brain should handle the constitutional issues. I just want the potholes filled.
No, I want more than the potholes filled. If this is the world's greatest country, then why don't we act like it from the top down? And we're not.
There's a lot that's going to change over the next 9 months or so. But one of the things that we shouldn't allow to change is our fundamental values. And if you are wondering, well, what are America's fundamental values? Well, up until recently, at least, they were embodied in the Constitution. We seem to be chipping away at that.
If you don't know, it's a problem. The thing is that it may not necessarily be your problem.
Yeah.
You know what? I am so through with this conversation for right now, but take a look at the explainer piece that Charles did on Friday.
Yeah.
It will probably still be photo featured by the time you get this podcast on Monday. This is how strongly I feel about this. And if there are people around you who are not educated on the situation, then educate them. Don't force them to believe what you believe.
No, like what we tried to do with the explainer article about where are we now, we tried to give you as impartial as we can manage a reporting of what has happened.
As fired up as I am, this is my belief. This is how I, Mike Worthley, feel about this issue. This is not the view of the site. This is my view, and Charles's view is his, and William over there going, oh my God, why do I work for this guy? And that's his opinion. And that's fine, okay? But get the facts, and educate the people around you on this. And what they choose is up to them. But don't let them just say, it's because Apple is good or because the FBI is good. Do not let that be why.
All right, let's change the topic. Let's do something nice. Let's do something fun. Let's do something light. And that is, we have a new book out. We, the collective MacNN, the socialist collective MacNN.
You absolute and utter dick.
Yeah. The Work Farm has produced another tome for the Glorious People's Revolution.
Oh.
This one is, we're very excited about it. I'm just kidding. We're very excited about it. Our new book is out, and we'd like to talk a little about it and how it came about. And that's why we've made Comrade William Gallagher get up at 5 a.m. his time so that he can join us and talk a little bit about this. William, you started a series last week. Well, you actually introed it the week before, but you started a series talking about specifically making an ebook and getting it through the approvals process. And then, to the surprise of all of us, I have to tell you, you did it. With a little bit of help from me, but mostly it was you. Let's not be shy. Tell us a little bit about what inspired this and what you ran into as you started the experiment. And also, how stupid was it to make a bet that you would actually have this book out by the end of the week?
All right, now that I agree with. It was ridiculously stupid. It's the surprise in your voice that I pulled it off that's giving me, of course, and also the comrade thing. I deeply believe that one of the advantages of MacNN over other things I read is that we don't kid around when reviewing things. You know, I read a lot of reviews that actually I recognize because I've seen the press release from it and it's more or less the same. And I try apps that don't work, but they've been praised elsewhere. With us, we actually use it. We actually try something with it. But as part of that, I think the only way to thoroughly test something is to use it. The only way to learn how to do something is to do it. So there we were with this ebook series. And I wanted to run the ebook series now because we've been through the approvals process with Apple on a project and we had lots to say about that. So I was just going to say, right, this is how you do it. And we'd end with how approvals work. And Monday morning, first day, I just thought, got to do a book for this. This is just worthless if we're telling you, do this, do that. Well, we should do this and do that. So we did. And it was possibly the most stupid thing I've done all year, though the year is still quite early. It did work out, and I'm criticizing you for being surprised at me. That's just personally offended. Fine. I was honestly agog when it worked out, partly because the whole reason, this peg of it being to do with the approvals process, the very last thing you do with ebooks is you submit them to the iBook store for Apple and to Amazon for Kindle, and you have to wait while they're checked out. And we pushed it on this one. They say 12 to 24 hours. If they'd stuck to that, we would not have completed the book in time for the last article. But who knows why? Both Amazon and Apple this time just boomed through the whole process. I spilt coffee when the email came through saying it was ready. And actually, this might be very British of me. Part of me was just a teeny bit disappointed because dramatically, it would have been much better if we'd failed on Friday and just, told you what it's really like.
Yeah, we would have been able to say, mean old Apple stopped us. We finished the book and now we can't.
Exactly. So what else is Apple doing this week but waiting for us?
But yes, I think I was awake when you got the email. And it seemed to me like it was 4 or 5 hours after you'd submitted it. How long was it actually?
Pretty much, yes. 3:05 on Thursday afternoon UK time. I submitted to iTunes, and it was something like 8:38 p.m. when they emailed through saying it's done.
So about 5 hours, yeah.
And Amazon was slightly shorter. Submitted to them afterwards, so that was about 3:15, and they emailed, I can't remember, about 8:27, something like that. Just a few minutes either side of Apple.
Amazing.
And I mean, I've done books this way before. I've done it with us before. Never had it be that fast. It's like they were both thinking, this'll show them. Yeah.
Well, I like to think that they were both reading the series and going, oh, crap, we're going to make them look terrible if we don't. We're going to get all the blame if they don't make it, so we have to.
Here's the thing. We actually have precedent why we didn't think it was going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. That is to do with the approvals process on the peg for doing it now. Because as well as, I'm not sure what to call them, books, ebooks, proper books, we also had that great trio of titles recently written for the site, PDFs of new user guides for people who've just bought their first Mac, people who've just bought their first iPad, people getting into iTunes and Apple Music. And I was involved with some of those, but really I was just part of the process of publishing it. And it was maddeningly frustrating. Apple said yes to two of them straight away. But the third one about iPads, they said, no, this looks like you're trying to be an Apple publication, or that there's a reasonable expectation someone looking at this would think it was done by Apple, and it isn't, so it can't be like that. And I thought that was entirely reasonable. The whole process of finding that out, though, they do not email you that information. You sit around waiting.
No, they're a bit obtuse about it. Yeah.
You think, well, surely it's gone through by now, and you look and it's still listed as in review. I think it took a day, maybe more, to get past that, and then they came back with this information, but they do it in such a way, they quote from their various regulations, and they're not terribly clear.
Yeah.
It boiled down to that was the problem. It mustn't look like it's an Apple publication, and of course it mustn't. But fixing that was extremely difficult. There was a text issue we actually changed the text of the book, and particularly the description, to explain independent MacNN publication, and that texting seemed to go through straight away. That one was okay, but we had to go through 3 or 4 covers before they would allow it. Bradley McBoney, the poor guy who designed us a great cover, by the end I was telling him, please make it dull and boring and see if that works. And
just anything.
the man isn't capable of that. So he kept doing interesting ones, and it did keep failing. And in the end, it's a pixel thin line between what is and isn't allowed. I completely accept that Apple is right to do this, and actually I like that they take this care. I mean, they're very careful about every aspect, not just whether or not it looks like theirs. Their approvals process I really believe in. I have no basis to say this really, but it seems to me the Amazon process is a lot more, whatever, straight through.
Yeah, I don't think they care about Apple intellectual property quite so much.
No.
Well, if we'd called it the Amazon guide to the iPad, maybe they'd have had a flag.
No, I don't think that would have been a problem either.
There is one great result out of all of this. The very last thing Bradley did was he did a new cover with a new iPad on it, and the home screen shown on that is not the standard Apple one, because we think that was part of the problem. It's actually my home screen. My iPad's home screen is now famous on the cover of a book.
There you go. Incidentally, if you happen to be near Waterstones in London, William's iPad will be signing copies of the book.
I won't, but it will, yes.
With the Apple Pencil.
Unrelated, would we get in trouble if we published the failed covers on the site?
Well, it's on our site. Apple doesn't control that, so
that's an interesting point.
I don't see why not.
I think we need to show the readers what the covers look like that got rejected.
They are so similar.
Well, again, the lesson we've learned from this is don't use stock photos from Apple on your cover if you can avoid it. Particularly now we have much greater respect for our friends at O'Reilly Books who just put animals on the cover.
Like marmosets and crap. I guess there's a reason for that. Now we know what it is.
Let's see Apple object to a duck-billed platypus. Let's see them do that.
I'd never thought that. I love the Missing Manual series that they do. And the covers I've always thought were rubbish, but I never really thought about it. That makes sense.
Yeah, suddenly it makes much more sense. One of the things we haven't talked about this new book is actually the content of it. It's
secret. Shush. No, don't. Shh.
What?
Terrorists could get a copy of this and learn how to use Pages.
Yes, you're right. Oh, dear. Anyway, it's the second volume of Pointers. Our first volume of Pointers became unexpectedly popular. I mean, we expected it to do well, but we didn't expect it to go to number 1 in the computers and internet category on both iBooks and Amazon. And for that, we are terribly grateful to our readers. Thank you so much. Take that, David Pogue. But now we've got a second volume out. It is like the first volume in that it is a collection of our Pointers columns from MacNN, all cleaned up, retested to make sure everything works fine. And again, a mere $1.99 US. And on top of that, we have a particular clause in there that I want Mike to talk a little about because it's very important to us. And it is also included in this volume. We put it in the last one as well. Mike?
Yeah, I'm not going to pull any punches. We're old. Okay. Between the three of us, we have as much experience between the three of us that most 10-man writing staffs have. Right? We've all been around since the dawn of the Mac.
Yep.
Okay. So between the three of us, that's 105 years of experience.
Oh,
I'm not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying this at all.
As you finished that sentence, I just was handed an AARP card. Thank you very much.
But here's the thing. The three of us remember user groups in their heyday.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with a user group, it's when a bunch of like-minded Apple users get together in a cafe or a library and just talk about crap. Maybe there'll be a presentation from a developer. Maybe there won't. Maybe you'll talk about new releases, whatever. And the internet has supplanted most of these groups. Most of the user groups are gone now.
Yeah.
Some of them still exist.
You're involved with one of the largest in the United States. I'm involved with one of the largest in Canada.
So here's the situation. If you as an educator want to use the materials in our Pointers book, go nuts.
Yeah.
You have blanket permission. We talk about it in the books. You can pillage the graphics for presentations. You just have to say where you got it from.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. You don't need to link to the book. We're not asking you to sell the book. You just have to say, I got this from MacNN.com. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
As I mentioned, Mike and I are both involved in still active Macintosh user groups. Ours, I don't know about his, but ours is great. It's a really, really nice group of folks. And yes, we've gotten past the point where we need to alert people to system updates and things like that, the way the original Macintosh user groups did. But we still talk about what's new. We sort of educate each other on our experiences with various products. We talk about what issues we're having. We have presentations from developers. We do. Usually now it's by FaceTime rather than in-person visits, but nevertheless, we still do it. And we talk about things that we've learned from each other. We just enjoy the socialization. There is an element to that is not like an internet forum, which we also have, or an email listserv, which we also have. There's just a personal aspect to it that we like a lot. Mike, is it the same with your group?
Yeah, the group we got, once a month, they also have a troubleshooting day where that's what they do.
Oh, nice.
You bring your problematic hardware, and speaking of leaked software, they have the Apple diagnostic software.
So, actually, I've got a problem with an iPhone that I can't crack open. Could I bring that along to the troubleshooting thing and they would sort it out?
I see what you're doing here.
Yes. Mr. Sneaky Undercover FBI agent.
My gander's already up here a little bit. So, let's
Sorry.
do not antagonize the ex-American.
Don't push him. One last thing I want to say about the two books, or about this newest book, which is MacNN Pointers Volume 2, iWork. Apple doesn't actually use that term anymore for the three apps that we're talking about, Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. But if you use them, you will probably find something of incredible value in this book. I did reading it because I'd forgotten he wrote about that. What is it? Oh. And this is the reaction we get from most people, is that they've learned something that they did not already know. And that's certainly worth a buck.
A buck.
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on. But what I really enjoyed most of all was, and I'm not going to spill the contents of it, you guys are going to have to buy the book to see. But let's just say that Mike wrote the foreword to the book, and then William wrote the introduction. And the two of them wrote it almost in the form of a workplace conversation.
Yes.
And it, particularly if you know them, and you guys have gotten to know us through this podcast, you can hear our voices. When you read the book, you will hear our voices, and you will chuckle. That's all I'm going to say. So check it out. It's available on Kindle. It's available on iBooks. So, sorry, Nook owners. Maybe one day we'll figure that out. But
the free ones are on Scribd.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They're also on Scribd or whatever you want to call it, Scrabble. Those are PDFs, as William mentioned. They're too short to make into ebooks, and ebooks, of course, are too short to be proper books.
Well, you know what? I've seen 99-cent ebooks on the bookstores that are as long as the free guides we put out for new Mac users, new iPad users, and iTunes.
That's an outrage.
But
what we like about the PDFs is they are incredibly quick reads, but they are also quite thorough in setting you up with your new Mac, your new iPad, or starting to explore iTunes beyond your local music library.
Yeah, you know what? Just get them and print them. Give them to whoever. You want to make somebody learn iBooks? Put it on iBooks. Make them read about the new iPad on iBooks.
Somewhere there's a young person listening to this podcast going, what do they mean by print them?
What is this print?
Moving on. Apple and defeat. There's really no other way to put it. The second Apple-Samsung patent trial has, barring a rehearing, which Apple will certainly ask for, has ended. This ain't going to the Supreme Court. It's ended and Apple lost, essentially. Apple won and then they lost. It's the weirdest case. But to summarize years of legal proceedings for you, in the second Apple and Samsung trial, there were 3 patents in particular that were at stake. One of them was the slide to unlock patent. There were a couple of others too. These were always considered to be kind of weak patents for reasons that I've never really quite understood, because at the time they were quite innovative, but they were kind of based on real world actions. Perhaps that's where the weakness comes from. Nevertheless, a jury found that Samsung had infringed on some of Apple's patents, and they also found in that same ruling that Apple had infringed on one of Samsung's patents. The net effect of which was a $120 million award to Apple. This was less than 5% of what Apple was asking for. So even when they won, it was kind of a defeat. It certainly was, if you believed, as the jury did, that Samsung was guilty of infringing Apple's patents, it certainly was a slap, not even on the wrist, more like a light brushing of the forearm. Then Samsung appealed, as is their right. And the appeals court has now weighed in on this. And the appeals court has said, nope, you know what? Those patents that Samsung was found guilty of copying of Apple's were invalid anyway. So it doesn't matter. Although they did uphold that Apple infringed one of Samsung's patents. So the net effect here is no money for Apple and no victory. It is the first time that Samsung has actually won something palpable in a U.S. court over the last 5 years. They've been at this for 5 years. Now, this doesn't affect the whole first patent trial. We're not even going to talk about that because it was just too complicated. But it does spell bad news for certain Apple patents, for this particular approach of trying to enforce Apple's patents. And, as I say, it may embolden Samsung to try this again, because there's, other than the unbelievable millions of dollars that each side has spent on lawyers and trying this thing, there's been no real penalty to Samsung at all, other than one. The rumor mill most recently says that Apple is now finally moving. They have been doing this slowly over time. They're now finally moving to the point where their iOS chips will just no longer be produced by Samsung. Now, this is just a rumor. It may not be true this year, but it is kind of clear that they are moving away in that direction, that they are developing other companies that can stand in Samsung's stead as chip producers. And Samsung, to be fair, are very good chip producers. So
yeah, they are.
So the developing other companies to rival them is impressive. And this is, I think, my opinion, ultimately the best revenge. Samsung has really suffered financially as a result of Apple's moving their business away. And Apple would not be moving their business away except that they did that thing they did. So ultimately, even though Apple doesn't seem to be able to win completely in court, they may ultimately have the last laugh on this. Samsung's division on this is hurting.
Yeah, don't feel bad for Samsung, though. They're still turning multi-billion-dollar profits.
Yes, but that's mostly their other divisions. And eventually they'll probably recover some of that. But it is, as flagship phones have sort of narrowed down and all the other smartphone manufacturers, at some point, all the ones that are not making any money are going to get out of this. I don't know when it'll happen, but by 2020, there will be fewer options on phones than there are now. I promise you that.
Yeah, have we seen a new Amazon Fire phone? No.
Well, that's just one example. But I mean, literally, other than Samsung and Apple, nobody at all is making money on smartphones. They make their money mostly in other divisions.
Yeah.
It's not an accident that Xiaomi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
It starts with an X. Yeah.
I'm going to call it Xiaomi.
Sure.
The Chinese manufacturer, they have suddenly and quickly and smartly invested in wearables because their phone division ain't doing so good anymore. Oddly enough, even in China, where they are quite popular for obvious reasons. I don't know what's going to come out of this. Samsung and Apple have not yet agreed to drop all their U.S. litigation, and there is still ongoing litigation coming up. But neither company has expressed an interest in going back to trial over new patents since the second trial ended. And I think ultimately they've decided, between them actually, that they can agree on one thing, and that is that the court system isn't really working out for them.
Yeah, the patent system in the United States is so hosed, and I'm not sure slide to unlock should have been invalidated. I'm not sure it should have been viewed as an invalid patent. I'm not sure that the patents that are currently under evaluation for invalidation should be that way. But where do you draw? This is another one of those things that where do you put the line? And are we well past it?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's always struck me as odd that if these patents are invalid, who validated them in the first place?
Government workers.
Well, I know, but why didn't you do your job correctly the first time then?
Well, the thing is they did, right? I mean, given the fiefdom that they exist in, they did exactly what they were supposed to do and exactly how they were supposed to do it. That seems to be the commonality in this podcast is the limited scope that individual government workers have and the enormous power that they wield at the same time in many cases.
Yeah.
You have, this is what you're allowed to do, but when you sign off on this, it gives the people that you're signing off on all of these abilities. And yeah, it's the common thread today. I'm not sure that it's the patent office that is the problem. I think it's the patent system as a whole, which is going to require a concerted government effort to fix.
Well, so much for that idea then.
Yeah. So
I don't mean to sound un-American here, but it does seem like, particularly to me, maybe just as a function of growing older, but over the last 30 years, I feel like the government is less effective at being able to effect big change. Incremental change still happens, and most of it is good on the whole. We have driverless cars now.
Well, you're talking like New Deal kind of stuff, right?
I'm talking about when was the last time I can remember huge government programs that turned out to be fairly effective? I mean, direct government programs, not just subsidized stuff like NASA. One can argue about the Affordable Health Care Act, for example. It's certainly a big thing that government did. So
I'm going to not comment on that right now. Having just had a delightful experience with a family member for the last week, I am going to refrain from getting unjustly emotionally involved in the situation right now.
Yeah, let's just say that Mike's going to be able to write one hell of a Living With column on that topic someday.
Yeah. Perhaps not at this venue, maybe at another one.
No, maybe at another venue.
The patent system is frustrating. On one hand, it needs to protect innovators, but on the other hand, it needs to not protect them so profoundly that it is hard for anything else in the space to grow. Patents were never intended as a bludgeon.
No, nor were they intended to cover broad methodology. You can't patent the breaststroke in swimming, but believe me, somebody's tried.
Well, here's an interesting parallel for you. If you look at board games, you cannot patent rules. Okay, that's why, Collegeopoly and all these other variants exist.
Right.
Because you cannot patent a rule set. You can put a trademark on the art associated with the rule set, but you can't patent the rule set.
Right.
So, I mean, how bizarre is that?
So why then does software, essentially, why is software methodologies patentable? That doesn't make sense.
There you go.
Another thing that doesn't make sense is the patent office has a system for reviewing. We may have made a mistake here. And they go through this process and it goes on forever. And
3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
It goes on 3 to 4 years.
And then eventually they come to a final ruling. And they say yes or no, it's not valid.
That can still be appealed.
Yeah. At that point, then the company can take it to court for another 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
And a judge who may or may not actually know what they're talking about can just decide without any experience in patent law. Well, without any experience in the patent office. I'm sorry, I should clarify that. Whether or not that patent is valid or not.
You know, it just occurred to me what some of the problem with the federal government is. Technology is moving too fast for the government to keep up with it.
Well, it's moving too fast for most people to keep up with it.
Yeah, and it just, not even, the All Writs Act notwithstanding, I mean, think of how many laws make no sense given that we all carry a supercomputer in our pockets.
Yeah. There's still laws on the books regulating telegrams.
Yeah.
Seriously.
From the headlines today,
Yeah.
in Louisville, Kentucky, AT&T is suing Louisville because they changed the law requiring, instead of a 6-month or longer review process for companies to have access to telephone poles, they just changed it to 30 days, and AT&T is suing to stop that so Google Fiber can't move in.
Ah, yeah. See, again.
How dumb is that? It's a freaking telephone pole. I've read the colorful metaphor involving a telephone pole, but I will not.
We also have our Highland games where, and
They're
suddenly,
called cabers,
yes,
then, right? They're
and
called telephone
suddenly
poles.
a whole bunch of telephone poles go missing. Next up, the Apple Watch final guesstimates, I guess we'll call that. Nobody actually knows how many Apple Watches Apple sold in calendar 2015 except Apple. But,
and they're not telling.
No, and they're not talking. You can kind of divine some vague figure from how much the revenue went up in the division that they report that in, but they do not break out the sales of Apple Watches from some of their other services and products. So
yeah, I think it's sort of miscellaneous crap and coffee money. I think is in the category it's in.
But the best estimates that we have suggest that the number is around, and they are probably roughly right, around 12 million watches. Now remember, the Apple Watch wasn't even announced until April and wasn't really available until June because, well, nobody quite sure why. But that means between 6 and 8 months of sales, and they sold 12 million of them. That's roughly 1.25 million a month. Is that a hit? Given that Apple sells about 5 million Macs in the same period, which is, I guess, roughly around the same number.
Let me give you a parallel. The Apple TV has been around for 7 years. Only now are people starting to go, hey, look what this box can do.
Yeah.
And it's been able to do it for 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, there are some new abilities in the latest generation, but basically the core functionality has been there since day one.
Apple has another product now that is not going to evolve that much in 5 years. There will be more versions, yes, and I don't think it'll do anything significantly different, but it's not like a product like the iPod that said, oh yeah, music, I use that.
Yeah.
So I think that the watch is in its infancy. I think they are including it in the catch-all financial category, not so much as to not share information with other companies, but because it's something else that Wall Street's going to freak out about. It's something they can say, well, we're happy and you should be happy too. And at some point, if it starts going gangbusters, they will say, we just sold our 50 millionth watch, or whatever number they so arbitrarily choose to do.
Yeah.
And it is a polarizing product. You either love the damn thing or you don't. And, here, I'm going to knock on some wood. I took advantage of the Woot sale.
Yeah, and ordered yourself one.
I have an Apple Watch coming. If I'm going to like it, who knows?
This is the interesting thing to me because we have all three of us Apple Watch owners, you being an eminent one, are on this podcast tonight. Now, William bought his almost immediately and loved it pretty much from the get-go. Am I correct in saying that?
Yep, absolutely.
I was gifted one very nicely, and I was skeptical about, I was interested in it because I'm a tech geek, but I was skeptical about whether it was worth the money or not for quite some time, and I have learned to love it. And then Mike's position, well, Mike, you tell him what your position has been up till now.
I use my phone as people use their watch. The vast majority of my computing is sitting down in front of my 15-inch MacBook Pro.
Right.
Whereas when my watch goes, it means I have an email. when my phone makes that noise, it means I have an email. The same thing that people are using their watches for.
Yeah. So you duct tape your phone to your wrist is what you're telling us.
Oh, no, I have it on a very flat, very smooth IKEA finished surface.
Oh.
So it kind of dances around a little bit on the wood and shakes the change underneath.
Levitates slightly.
It's a pretty effective alarm that I've got something going on. My computer is telling me that there's something going on.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm keeping an open mind on this. I did not think that the iPod was worth the money. until I got a 10 gig refurb one.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my God, why did I not buy this when it came out?
Right.
Funny, I was the same with iPods until I used an iPod mini, and then that was it. I was on the slope. I was buying the full-size one and things. I don't know what it was with it, but you will love your watch. I promise you. Join us. Join us.
But the bottom line is this product a hit? I think Apple feels like it is doing what they intended it to do. Wall Street probably thinks it's a slow burn at best. It's certainly not going to become the next iPod.
Yeah, I think it is successful, but not universally successful. It's not going to be as ubiquitous as the iPod, but I think that it will have its market share and will continue like the Apple TV and will continue to be successful in that segment.
And as we often do on the MacNN podcast, it is time once again for a nice change from all the politics, the negativity, and the cynicism. It's awful. Instead, we've got William Gallagher here with us to extol the virtues of his app of the week. And, spoiler alert, it has something to do with our new book. William, what is your app of the week?
It's the very political, very Republican, very Democrat Vellum. It's the ebook production app that actually we've used before. When we've been doing ebooks before, we've looked at everything, all the possible ways of producing ebooks, and we came down to the truth, if you like. Not a comparative review, but next time we do an ebook, we're using this app, we're using that app, and the one we're using at the end is Vellum. It is very much like iBooks Author, if you use that, in that it's a set of simple templates. I think beautifully designed templates, but comparatively simple ones that let you take your Word or just your text files and arrange them, produce books out of it, and then it actually does all the formatting for you for ebooks, makes the files ready for uploading. And I'm saying this like it's a simple thing. Without Vellum, I found it quite a pain putting all this stuff together and making sure you had everything right. I don't like the idea of using templates because everybody uses the same templates. If you walk into a PowerPoint presentation, you know it's PowerPoint. No matter what they've done, you can smell PowerPoint.
Amen.
And it's the same with every template. It is the same with iBooks Author. It is the same with Vellum. But I happen to like the way Vellum does its books. We use just the basic, simple stuff for it, but we use it a lot. And in the last week, I've been really stress testing Vellum. We have stress tested this app before. We have done books through it. We've pummeled away at this, and I adore it, actually. I did have problems with it the last time we did a book, and I'm delighted to find that actually it was updated 4 weeks ago. It's now on version 1.3.4, and one of the things they've incrementally fixed is a problem I had to do with various links. I was finding little bugs with links going wrong, and now all sorted. So my only thing about Vellum is I have to accept the fact that there is an argument that it's expensive for what it does. I do not agree with that, but there is an argument. The app itself is completely free. You can do what you like with it, producing books, but when you actually want to create that book file, whether you're going to charge money for the book or not, you have to pay. You pay Vellum a fee of $30 for one book, or I think it's about $50 for 10. No, it's $100 for 10 books, or $200, and you can just produce as many as you like. If you were dabbling, then $200 would be expensive, particularly since iBooks Author is free. But we're not dabbling. We're doing this seriously. We are actually using this tool, and I think it's more than worth the money for it. Also, I think need to be clear here is we've just done this book with it now, Pointers about iWork. If tomorrow I find a mistake in it, or next week we have a new thing we want to add, I don't have to pay Vellum again. I paid the one fee for the one book, and that's it forever. So I actually think it's a very reasonable fee for a very, very good product. And it's such a simple to use product that it's actually quite hard to pin down what's so good about it, but it's very smooth. I would like more keyboard shortcuts for various things, but I've actually used Keyboard Maestro to add those for me, so I have keyboard shortcuts for it.
Clever.
I was so pleased when I found that. It actually made production fly through. So yeah, there are more things they could add to it, but they are updating it practically monthly from the look of the release list. It's a gorgeous app being looked after and tended and actually enjoyed.
The other thing that I was going to mention that I quite like about it is that one program that can issue ebooks ready to go for iBooks and Kindle.
Yes. It also does Nook, but I don't know anybody who has a Nook. And there's something else it does, other types. Kobo?
Yes.
Who's heard of Kobo?
Well, a lot of Canadians. It's very popular here.
Oh, is that true? Oh, right. We should be doing a Canadian special edition of the book then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the cover should say, sorry, we didn't get this out earlier.
Yes.
So it's very Canadian.
But you're right. We could do that now. Before you and I finish speaking, one button would make a Kobo book. I don't actually know anything about the Kobo store and how you do that, so that might take a little longer. But to create the files ready for it, it is one click. Given how complicated this stuff is behind the scenes, I find that quite deliciously satisfying, pressing that generate button.
It's wonderful because you've put a lot of work into the steps that go into this. You've written the book, you've planned the book, you've executed the book, you've designed the book, you have a cover, everything's ready to go. And then finally, once it all looks good in Vellum, as you say, there's just that one last click.
Very satisfying. Plus, they had me at the name Vellum. I just thought it is an app beauty, actually. Let's not hold it back. I think it's designed with care for it by people who like books, and it really shows.
Yeah, I believe it was ex-Apple people that are behind it. So
yes,
I think that should tell you what you need to know.
Yes.
Vellum starts at, as you mentioned, $30 for a single book, but you can compose the book right up to the very end for nothing.
And you can preview it within the app, so you get a very clear look of what's going on for it. So yeah, go get it now and worry about the price later when you're hooked.
If you only feel like you have the one great book in you, not only do you get to preview it until you're absolutely satisfied with it before paying a penny, but that ultimate price for the one book is $30. You only feel stupid if you then have a brilliant idea for another 10.
Yeah, tell me about that one. Okay.
Vellum is available in the App Store.
Yes, on the Mac App Store. I don't believe actually you can get it directly from the website. Version 1.3.4 updated just the end of January.
Thank you so much. And now we know. If you want to follow in our footsteps, our big secret is Vellum.
Oh, yes.
Well, that about wraps it up for episode 53 of the MacNN podcast. As always, we just are delighted that you had a chance to join us. We hope you'll go out and buy the book. But any way that you choose to show your support for MacNN in our various little efforts and projects, we appreciate it. We're always glad to have this opportunity to talk to you. I'm Charles Martin. I'm the editor of MacNN. On behalf of the entire staff, we thank you for listening. Stay tuned because this story is blowing up.
To reiterate, educate your neighbors.
Yeah.
This is not going to go away.
It's not going to go away or get better without education. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.